Hi guys and welcome back to the Mighty Blues. My name is of course Cameron and welcome back today to another video. It is Thursday. Hope you all are doing well. It is the international break, which of course means there isn't an awful lot going on in the world of Everton Football Club. We've not had much news over the last few days or so, of course, as the international games begin tonight, I believe. However, what we have had is a really, really interesting 10-part podcast/series on BBC Sounds regarding Everton's season last season. It has been created by Julia Bold, who has put fantastic work into this project. She's done an incredible amount of research and she's worked extremely hard on this with BBC Sounds. I believe there's a couple of other people involved in it as well. It's called Everton Nothing Will Be the Same. It's a 10-part series covering the roller coaster season that was the 2022-2023 season. Inside of it, there is interviews and quotes from people like Seamus Coleman, people like Sean Dyche, people like Kevin Thelwell, various different people that obviously were involved with Everton Football Club during what was another absolutely horrific season for the club last season. And from that 10-part series, which I highly recommend you going and watching and checking out and listening to, we've had a couple of quotes that I wanted to sort of point out and discuss in a video, because there's certainly some interest around a couple of things that have been said by a couple of different people. We're going to specifically talk about one thing today, and that is Seamus Coleman. And we're going to talk about the term legend, because it is thrown about an awful lot these days for some players, and it is mentioned, an awful lot in regards to Seamus Coleman. But Seamus has had his say on whether or not he believes he is an Everton legend, so we'll get into that in a moment. And it's actually a really, really interesting situation, this, because I've been sitting down with my girlfriend every night and watching a couple of the football documentaries. We've recently watched the David Beckham one, we've watched the Wayne Rooney one, and we're now on to the Tottenham documentary, the All or Nothing. I don't know why, I just never ever got round to watching these documentaries. So we're sort of in a little bit of a football documentary binge at the moment, and I was sitting there last night thinking, I wonder if there'll ever be any form of documentary on Everton Football Club, because I'd love to see what goes on, behind the scenes of this football club, and what actually is happening day in, day out. And then literally, less than 24 hours later, I wake up, and whilst this isn't an Amazon documentary as per se in terms of something you can watch, it's definitely a really insightful look into what was one of the most difficult seasons we've gone through in recent times. So massive shout out to Julia, massive shout out to BBC Sounds as well for putting that together. Go and give it a listen if you haven't already. I'll leave the link to that in the description down below. But as I said, we're going to talk about Everton captain Seamus Coleman today, because he has had a couple of things to say in the documentary. One of them really sort of sticking out and really causing a topic of conversation amongst social media this afternoon. Seamus said, "Club legend? Not for me, because in my opinion, you have to have won something at a football club to be a club legend. I'll be someone that has played 300 or 400 games forever, but club legend, not in my eyes." Now, obviously, when we put this quote on Twitter, or X as it is now known, I'll probably never ever stop calling it Twitter, by the way, so if that upsets you or offends you, then I apologise. Sorry, Elon, if you're listening. But obviously, when we posted this quote on social media, and various other people posted it on social media, and people had started to listen to the the series, so they'd heard it, there was a lot of discussion about this, because I feel like the word legend is something that is so dependent on a personal view or a personal opinion. What a club legend is to one person may not necessarily be a club legend to somebody else, and vice versa. And the sort of the general framework that is used to describe a club legend is often how successful they have been at the football club, how many trophies have they won, have they captained the side to a league title, have they captained the side to a European competition, etc., etc. And if those, if the answers to those questions are no, then there is a lot of people that therefore don't deem, a certain player a club legend if they haven't been able to guide their team to a trophy, or they haven't been, a part of a successful period in the club's history. And as Seamus has said, you have to have won something at a football club to be a club legend. I'll be someone that's played 300 or 400 games forever, but not a club legend. And I understand that. I do, because I definitely understand the notion that for you to be a legend of a football club, you have to have been successful. You have to have played in a team that has won trophies. You have to have played in a team that not only do your own fans look at and think, wow, what a side that was, what a player he was in his day, but the wider football fan base look and think that as well. And I think that is the difference between, ultimately players that are at a football club for a long time and wins trophies, and players that are at a football club for a long time and don't win trophies. The difference being is that if you were somebody that plays 400 games for a football club that maybe wins 2 league titles in that time, maybe wins a couple of FA Cups, maybe challenges in the latter stages of the Champions League, then you're probably seen by the wider football audience, i.e. other football fans, not necessarily fans of your football club, as a legend, as somebody that is very highly respected. And I'm not saying Seamus isn't a highly respected footballer outside of Everton, because anybody that has met Seamus will tell you how lovely of a human being he is. Frank Lampard once famously said he was the nicest person that he's ever met, and I'm sure the majority of football fans will understand that Seamus is a top professional and was a top player back in his day. But the word legend, I don't think would be used outside of Evertonians to describe Seamus because of that lack of success. But what is really important to me is why we have not necessarily been successful during the time that Seamus Coleman has been at Everton Football Club, and whether or not that is through a fault of Seamus Coleman. And the answer to that, for me, is simply no, it isn't. There have been players that have played for Everton Football Club in my lifetime, the 25 years that I've been on this planet. There have been players that have played for this football club that have deserved to win trophies, that haven't won trophies through no fault of their own, not because they've not been good enough, or they've not turned up in important games, or they've been inconsistent, just because ultimately one player can't win a trophy for a team, and if the rest of your teammates, the other 9 or 10 players on the pitch, aren't up for it, then it's very, very unlikely you're going to win that game, especially as a defender and as a right back. If you're a centre forward, then maybe it's a little bit different. Maybe you can drag your team to a trophy. Maybe you can drag your team through a final. But as a right back, that's very unlikely to happen. And I look at players like Seamus Coleman, and I look at players like Leighton Baines, and I look at players like Tim Cahill, and I think, well, did you deserve to win trophies at Everton Football Club? Yes, you absolutely did. It broke my heart the day that Leighton Baines announced his retirement, because I knew he would never lift a trophy for Everton, and he deserved to lift a trophy for Everton without a shadow of a doubt. And Seamus Coleman is very, very much in that same bracket. If Seamus Coleman comes to the end of his career at this football club and he hasn't lifted a trophy, it will be a disgrace. Not a disgrace in terms of a disgrace on Seamus Coleman. It will be a disgrace on football that a player as good, as consistent, and as loyal as Seamus Coleman has gone his whole career without winning a single trophy. And therefore, that's where the legend conversation becomes a little bit screwed for me, because I would argue Seamus Coleman is an Everton legend, and I would argue that for many, many a reason. I understand the argument that he isn't a legend, because to be a legend, you've got to win a trophy. But as I said, we're not talking about somebody that has played 400 games but hasn't really been very good in those 400 games, or hasn't really had an impact, or hasn't really, dug deep or worked hard or give everything. We're talking about somebody that has played a total of 409 games for Everton Football Club, 28 goals, 32 assists during that time. He's played 352 times in the Premier League for Everton, 22 goals, 29 assists, 32 times in the FA Cup, 17 times in the League Cup, or the Carabao Cup as it's known now, but of course it's been known as different names over the years. He's 35 years of age. He's the Everton captain. And yet, still, even after 320 odd appearances, even being 35 years of age, even signing for Everton Football Club over a decade ago, we still needed Seamus Coleman to keep us in the Premier League last season. So when Seamus comes out and he reflects on that season, and he reflects on, how difficult that season was in this 10-part series on BBC Sounds, and he says things like, club legend, not for me, you've got to win a trophy to be a club legend. How about being at a football club for over a decade, being 35 years old playing in the Premier League, which isn't an easy feat, and still digging deep, working hard, fighting for your football club, and being a prominent figure in the fight for survival. It's not like Seamus sat on the bench for the entirety of last season and he's reflecting on the season sitting on the bench. He was in the team every week until he got his injuries. Every single game Seamus Coleman was fit for, he was in that starting 11. And let me just tell you something now as well. Even the following season, 35 years old, obviously there was questions about his future in the summer. Would he stay at the football club? Would he retire, etc., etc. Even now, if Seamus Coleman was fit for the Merseyside derby, he would play in the Merseyside derby. And it wouldn't be because he is our captain, or it wouldn't be because he's been here for so long. It wouldn't be for sentimental reasons. It would be because at 35 years old, he is still our best fullback at this football club. Now, yes, I understand that isn't necessarily a good thing, because that shows the failures of the football club. A 35-year-old shouldn't be the best fullback at the football club. I get that. However, it's not Seamus Coleman's fault that the football club have failed to recruit properly over the last 4 or 5 years. It's not Seamus Coleman's fault that the football club are still reliant on him at his age. It's not his fault that he gets injured. He's at an age now where he shouldn't be playing 30-odd Premier League games a season, but he does, and he will, because he loves this football club more than anything, and he wouldn't ever turn around and say, no, I'm not playing. And the reality is, like I've just said, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, we need him. And we've seen that massively this season. Nathan Patterson has been in, has done okay at times, but not really settled himself in. Ashley Young has been poor when he's been at right back. We've had James Garner there, but we don't necessarily want him there because he's better in midfield. We need Seamus to return from injury. We're missing him badly. And like I said, that was the case last season. It wasn't like he was sat on the sidelines watching from afar, talking about being a club legend and talking about surviving. He was on the pitch. He was battling through it. He was leading by example. He scored a vitally important goal in a huge game for us at Goodison against Leeds United. And I've not always been Seamus's biggest, biggest complimenter in terms of I've never criticised his attitude or his work rate or his desire. But there's been times I've criticised Seamus Coleman's performance. Absolutely, of course I have. Because there's been times where his age is shown and his lack of stamina and his lack of fitness. And there's been times where, ultimately, him being a 33, 34-year-old right back has come to haunt Everton when we've come up against teams with 19, 20-year-old wingers who are just naturally quicker than him and competing for pace. Absolutely, I've criticised Seamus. But I'll never, ever, ever criticise his commitment or his desire or his passion or his belief in himself and this football club. Every single game Everton play, Seamus Coleman is there. Whether or not he's in the squad or whether or not he's injured, he's there every single week. I watched them walk past the park end at Goodison Park last Saturday when we beat Bournemouth. I've watched them with the younger players in pre-season games, after a pre-season game, warming down with the younger players, giving them credit, giving them bits of advice. I will go out here And usually when people say these types of things, they say, I'll go out on a limb, or I'll say something that people might disagree with. When I say what I'm about to say, I don't think anybody will disagree with this. I don't think there is a human being who has worked at Everton Football Club over the course of the last, 15 years, that would have a bad word to say about Seamus Coleman. And there is some proof in that statement. He also goes on to say in one of the episodes, Carlo Ancelotti rang me a couple of days after the Leeds game and said, oh my God, what a goal. And we spoke for a couple of minutes. He is someone I have stayed in touch with. He goes on to say, Marco Silva texted me after it saying it was an important 3 points and well done on the goal. It is nice because when they are here, I give my best and do all I can, and I want them to stay in the job as long as possible. So we're not only talking about somebody who, pardon me, holds himself in the highest esteem in terms of as a professional, always turns up for training, is always there at the match, whether or not he's in a match day squad, is setting an example to the young players, is willing to help the young players, is constantly training at a top level. But we're talking about somebody who still, because of his desire and his work rate and his ability and his quality, would get into this Everton team, 400 appearances later, 15 years after he signed for the football club for £60,000. £60,000. And if the big sort of landmark or template for being a club legend is, well, has he won a trophy? Well, two things I would rebuttal that with. Firstly, does he deserve to win a trophy with Everton Football Club? I don't think there'd be many people that would say no. Secondly, if he retires and Everton haven't won a trophy, is that through any fault of Seamus Coleman's? Absolutely not. He has done everything he could do to ensure Everton are a success. And it's through the fault of everybody else. Poor ownership, poor management, poor recruitment. That has meant that, unfortunately, as of yet, that hasn't come true. That could still come true because obviously he's still playing for Everton, and hopefully, touch wood, it does. Because I'd love nothing more than to see Seamus Coleman lift a trophy with Everton. But for me, I think certain players go beyond the stereotypical sort of checklist of what it is to be a club legend. I think certain players exceed the rules. I think certain players are an exemption to the typical norm. And I think Seamus Coleman is one of those. I think Seamus Coleman is an Everton legend without a doubt. And I really, really want to know your thoughts and opinions on this. Let me know them in the comment section down below. Is Seamus Coleman an Everton legend? I really, really want to know what you all have to say. Let us know your thoughts. If you have enjoyed this one, please do leave a like. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you are new as well. That would mean a huge, huge amount to me. We'll be back over the next couple of days with another video, so look out for that one. Big, big thank you all for watching. And yeah, is Seamus a legend? For me, he absolutely is, and I cannot wait for him to return to fitness. Up the toffees. See you later.